What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be starting our Where to Hand Trap series. This video has been a long time coming for me. I've put a lot of work into this as well to kind of just start the whole thing in general. And now that I kind of have the template for it, I should be able to start putting these out regularly as the formats continue to change. Before we get started, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button as well as hitting the notification bell so that way you get notified every single time that I post a video. Doing these things really helps push my videos out to people who have never seen them before, and that is the biggest thank you that you could give me. So we'll dive right on in. So to start, we are looking at Dracotail branded. So this is going to be the most represented deck of the format. It just frankly is. It doesn't matter if it's the best deck at the time or I think that right now we're kind of in this little limbo of a triangle format from the Justice Hunters decks, but this is by far the most represented deck. This is the deck that a lot of players are playing, what they gravitate towards, and overall it just has a pretty good matchup into a lot of the meta. And so what we will do is start with Ash Blossom. So with Ash Blossom, what I'm going to do is I am going to Ash the Rahu or the Branded Fusion, whichever they activate first. Those are the two cards that are going to get them instant sets if this card resolves. Ashing a like Kewl or a Lucius blindly is really can be pretty detrimental for you, just because if they have any way to extend whatsoever, then they are going to full combo you, and you just wasted an Ash on them, where you could have possibly saved that Ash for a trap if you really wanted to, but Rahu and Branded Fusion give them the most advantage out of any card in the entire deck. This is what pulls the exact Dracotail name that they need from the deck, being Rahu, and then Branded Fusion just being a play starter in terms of dumping the light Dracotail monster, which gives them a set, and then just kind of starts their combos from there. If you don't Ash these cards, you're probably letting your opponent get too far, and if you Ash the other cards, then you're just waiting like a sitting duck for them to activate one of these cards. So my recommendation would be to Ash whichever they activate first. In terms of Bell, you have the option to Bell any of the traps, which is what I would recommend saving them for. You can technically Ash the Arthalion if they don't chain block properly, which a good player is not going to do that, but a new player may do that. So, if for some reason that's the first opportunity that you get to Bell and they don't chain block it correctly, that's a very, very impactful spot. Urgula, the effect to bring back typically 5 mana, that can also cut them off from having 5 mana on your turn, so that could be a pretty good Bell as well, but most of the time I'm saving it for the traps. Usually there is at least one trap, depending on what deck I'm playing, that is pretty detrimental to that engine. If you're playing Mitsurugi, you probably want to make sure that you have a Bell for the Flame, because you really want your ritual spell to resolve. If something like a Sting really hurts your deck, which kind of hurts Mitsurugi too, but it hurts, the Orchest engine for myself. Those are the type of cards that I want Bell for, and they make a big difference as well. One of the things that happened in one of my games recently was I went Called by the Grave, target their seals, and then they chained Flame, because that was the kind of choke point for them, and I had a Bell for the Flame. So Bell can be very good against this deck. In fact, it actually really is good. And so when we talk about Crow, it's going to be on the important Arthalion target, or if for some reason you had a different hand trap for Arthalion and you were able to keep them off of that, then you can always hit whatever the Urgula is trying to bring back to hand, which again is typically the 5 mana. And so we can keep them off of fusing on our turn if we get rid of the 5 mana for them, which cuts off their follow-up. It cuts off a lot if they don't have Malulu set up on board already. Going into Effect Veiler and Imperm, these are going to essentially do the same thing for this deck. I would not recommend holding Imperm for their turn. You're going to let them get way too far. If you're thinking, oh, I'm going to hold the Imperm for Gulamel or for the Regis, you're just letting your opponent get way too far at that point, and it's kind of just too far gone, where I'm going to take the chance of hitting the Malulu or the Lucius if they normal summon one of those. Lucius is a pretty weak normal summon. If they're normal summoning Lucius, then that means that they don't have a way to Malulu. So that kind of tells you that their hand is pretty weak. So if they normal summon Lucius, unless I need cards in my hand from like resolving a Mole Charmy or something like that, like unless my hand is really bad and I need a Mole Charmy to resolve, I'm going to Imperm Lucius. I'm going to Valor Lucius just because that shows me that their hand is pretty weak at that point. Now, normal summoning Malulu, sometimes they use it as protection for their fusion spells. So you can kind of gauge what they do based off of that, because you can either wait for Malulu effect. If they do it on like the normal summon window, like as their next action, I would probably Imperm that. That might be their only play starter. And so if you can cut them off right from the start, then they won't gain advantage as they continue through the plays. If you have the opportunity to Imperm or Valor Arthalion, that is definitely the best place to do it. But a lot of times, your opponent already has 5 mana in hand, and you know that they have 5 mana in hand. So there's realistically no point in doing that. You're just going -1 at that point, because then they're just going to fuse off the Arthalion. So I would recommend hitting their normal summon. That's going to try to stop the kind of start of their turn. If they have playthroughs, they probably had playthroughs anyway. So I would just take the chance and just hit that. We're kind of in a meta like that, where you really just kind of have to start the beginning plays, because if you let your opponent get too far, then they start gaining advantage and they start gaining ways to now play around more hand traps, where at the beginning of the turn, that was the less likelihood that they had to play around hand traps. Now, in terms of impulse, I'm going to hit obviously Rahu or Phimena to stop the fusion summons. If they are playing into my board, I am hitting Ketu every single time. That card is way too powerful as a board breaker, and so yeah, I am definitely hitting Ketu. Same thing with Dominus Purge. If whichever they activate first on their turn, I'm going to purge the Ketu or the Lucius, whichever one they activate first. If it's obviously on my turn, then Purge can be very, very good against Ketu, because you're just shutting off the whole effect, the add and the summon. So that is very, very nice as well. Going through the next slide, which is still on Dracotail branded, but we're going to talk about the cards that are good and bad versus the deck. So a lot of these cards are kind of like generic for the deck. There is no like specific place to hit. Something like the Psyframe card that I put in there, that's going to be like the Psyframe package as a whole. So like Gamma plus the Delta, because you're not just putting Delta into your deck, you're also putting Gamma into your deck. So that's going to be the combination of the two. And so Delta can be very good at this deck, obviously, because it has a lot of powerful spells. But we'll start with Retaliating Sea. Very, very good card against that deck. It's essentially just a Macrocosmos when it summons itself out, and so it just stays on the field, and then Dracotail requires all of its monsters to hit the graveyard to be able to trigger further sets. So that really, really shuts off their deck. Similar to Shifter, it does the same thing. It's just a lingering floodgate that is pretty toxic, but it's a one-off, so you might not get hit with it too often. Fualos is the only Molcharmy that is good against Dracotail branded, and it probably will give you 1 to 3 draws depending on how hard your opponent plays into it. Likely they'll give you 1 to 2 draws. So the Delta package, like I was just talking about, can be very good against the powerful spells that they have, as well as Gamma just being good as well as a generic monster negate. And so Izuna can be really, really good into this deck, especially because a lot of times what you'll do is you will just dump the Lupus and then summon out the Lupus and not even use Izuna as material. You'll just summon out Typhon. And so then that will cut them off from using Arthalion effect, Regis effect. It will also cut them off from Secretarion Dragon effect, Mysterion Dragon effect. And so those types of card effects are pretty essential to the deck, and so a lot of times you can cut that off. And so then starting on your turn, what you'll do is you will just swing into whatever body is smaller than 3k with the Typhon. If you play Valon, then you can actually flip the Arthalion over and then just hit it while it's in defense position face down, and then just go straight into Zeus and just wipe the whole field. So that is a very good play that you can do with those cards. The cards that are bad for the deck, they're pretty obvious. Nibiru, a lot of times they don't even play into Nibiru, so it's not worth having a slot in your deck for. The other two Molcharmies, they don't summon from hand very often, and they don't summon from graveyard as well. And then the Droll Lockbird, it only does it if they have Ketu Lucius as their like only starters. It turns off one of them, but the problem with that is that then they just Ketu search Fimena, and then if you droll them after that, then they just won't even summon the Lucius. They'll just use Fimena effect, fuse off, and then go throughout their plays like you never did anything. And then Lancia doesn't do anything to the deck. There's no banishing in the deck. One thing to mention is that the Izuna play that I was talking about, you do have to be careful about if they have access to Pan or not, because that is what's going to be able to pop the card. All of the rest of their effects target, so you'll have Lupus underneath to protect from targeting, but Pan is able to pop as well. And so even on my opponent's turn, if they if as I'm trying to go into battle phase, they use Fimena effect, I'll take that trade all day long. If they waste a Fimena effect to use Pan to pop my Typhon, and now I'm free to use the rest of my 5 cards to do whatever I want with, that's a pretty good trade in my opinion. So now we will go into the Yummy Mitsurugi. I also included the Sulfa cards in this as well because all of the different versions of the deck, you know, kind of have similar feels to them. So I think the most represented one is going to be Yummy Mitsurugi, which is why I kind of tailored this a little bit more to it. But I did want to mention the Sulfa cards as well. So Purge and Ash, you're going to want to hit the Cupsy, the Saji, or Happiness, and specifically the Saji, because for whatever reason, a lot of newer players like to hit Habakiri, and that's just not correct, because you're going to get hard punished by them already having a Murakumo in hand, or having a way to a ritual spell as well. So I would recommend just cutting off the Saji so that they just can't even search the ritual spell in the first place, as well as you can hit Happiness in the Sorrowful Chord engine, which is a very good one because they search 2 cards with that. So that's a very good spot to do that as well. Which engine you hit is kind of depending on what the rest of your hand looks like, what the situation looks like. And that is why I'm not going to tell you to hit one specific card. I'm not just going to tell you, hey, hit Cupsy, because it's going to depend on the situation. These are just the cards that I would hit rather than like, you know, I wouldn't hit the effect monster, the main deck effects monster Cupsy, because at that point, if you don't have any other hand traps, then they're just going to go into Snatchy and then go full combo anyway. So that doesn't really matter. Now, in combination with hand traps, which we can never predict those types of situations, that's what just playing the game is going to do for you. You know, then we can start to tailor our hand traps a little bit more. But generically, we really just want to kind of hit, you know, the first card that we see out of these, or if there is a certain engine that your deck does not play well into. So if your deck does not, if your deck plays well into the Yummy cards, but does not play well into the Mitsurugi cards, then you might make that conscious decision of holding it. But you also have to remember that at that point, you know, if they have something like Habakiri in hand and they're able to set up Herald before, now it just nullifies your hand traps. So keep that in mind as well. Like I said, this is the type of format where you kind of just want to play the guessing game and just hit your opponent as early as possible, because if you let your opponent go too far, they will gain way too much advantage off of one card. So those are where you can hit those spots. Bell is also very good into this deck as well. You can hit the Murakumo when it's trying to come back, as long as it's not chain blocked for whatever reason. Hitting Prayers is also very, very good. It just cuts them off of whatever they're trying to search for that engine piece. Even if you draw into Bell, it's very, very good, because this is going to stop them from reviving something like a Murakumo if it's stuck in grave. And then similarly to how we've always kind of seen this card, if you have something like Ash plus Bell going into a Cupsy, you're probably going to win that game a lot of times, because you're just going to Ash the Cupsy effect, they're going to try to tag out, and then you'll just hit hit it with a Bell, and then they get nothing. So Bell can be very good against that as well. Again, you have to gauge the situation to see if that is where you want to Bell or not, but these are the options for you. DD Crow and different Bestials can hit the Murakumo in this deck. There's nothing that targets in the Yummy engine in terms of like reviving from the graveyard, so they don't function that well into that specifically. But hitting Murakumo, mainly what you want to do is, in most situations, whenever the Murakumo is tributed off, if it's tributed off for cost, you want to hit it with a Crow or a Bestial at that time, because what will happen is that you will hit it, and then on the next chain link, it will try to read that it was in the graveyard, and it is not in the graveyard anymore, so it's not where it is supposed to be at its trigger location anymore, and so it does not work. The effect cannot even trigger in the first place because it's not in its proper location that it was sent to at the cost of the previous chain. So you just hit that at cost, they tribute it, you know, put your Bestial down or your Crow down, and then just hit it out, and then in the next chain link, they won't be able to trigger whatever they tributed off. Most times you want to hit Murakumo because we just want to get rid of that card. In terms of Veiler or Imperm, these cards are very, very bad against this deck. Very, very bad. They don't have a lot of opportunities to hit. The main cards that you're going to hit with a Veiler or an Imperm are the Cupsy to keep them off of surprise. And then if they are playing the Sulfur engine, then you can hit the Primora because that card kind of sets up the Omni Negate for them and bridges into their Yummy engine. So I would not let that card go through. And then the only time that I would ever hit Snatchy, obviously, you know, for whatever reason, a lot of beginning players do this too because Snatchy is a very, very good card, but they will hit it with another level 1 on board. That doesn't make any sense. It's a quick effect synchro on either turn. So you want to only hit Snatchy if it is the lone monster on board. If they normal summon something like a Cookie and then they don't, you know, they link off into Snatchy and immediately activate the Snatchy effect without summoning out another monster, then go ahead and Imperm that, because that shows 100% of the time a player that is activating Snatchy effect all by itself on field, they don't have any other plays. They're relying on getting to the field spell to bring back a monster so that they can go into Cupseed to search 2. If that situation happens, Imperm or Veiler that every single time, because that is what's going to keep them off of continuing to combo. Obviously, if they do Cupsy first, you know, that's a little bit different just because they search the quick play spell. The only thing that you have to watch out for if they do Marshmallow, because they'll trigger Marshmallow effect to special summon, link off for Snatchy. It might be their only starter in hand, right? So you could negate the Snatchy. The problem is that they could have a normal summon that they could extend with. But again, you would think that at that point that they would lay down that first and not trigger Snatchy effect, so that way they can go into Cupsy and then they can trigger Snatchy later. And then in terms of Impulse, I'm just hitting the Ritual every single time. That card is way too powerful if it resolves. The only time that I will use an Impulse on one of the Synchro Yummies is if it just wins the game on the spot. If that interaction, if you recognize that you just win the game on the spot from there, then you can hit it with Impulse. But you know, they may not even have a monster on board at that point either because it shuffles back for cost. So keep that in mind. But again, the Ritual spell is the main spot that you want to hit in this deck. And then cards that are good against this deck. So Nibiru can be very good against this deck. It just depends on how greedy they are in terms of their plays and if they play Link Spider and things like that. But it can be very good into this deck. This is a huge, huge combo deck. Keep in mind, too, that Nib is also good into this deck because they summon a lot on your turn as well. So if you can kind of play into the board minimally and use up their interactions to the point where they're summoning out 5 times, then you just nuke the whole board there with Nib and then try to continue playing from there. All of the Mulch Armies are very good against the Yummy Mitsurugi deck specifically. The Perulia just keeps them off of doing a lot of just like body dumping from the hand. The Meowls is very good at keeping them off of extending with the Mitsurugi engine as well as extending with the Yummy engine. Fualis is obviously really, really good. They're going to summon from deck and from extra deck with both engines. But Meowls is also good if you draw it on your turn as well. So if you don't have any cards on your field and you draw into Meowls, that's actually pretty good because you're going to draw quite a bit as they interact with you, as they tag out the synchros, as they try to summon back Mitsurugi monsters. It's going to give you quite a bit of draws for them just to interact with you. So keep that in mind with Meowls. It can be pretty good into this matchup, and even drawing into it is very, very good. Droll is an obvious for this deck. You're cutting them off of different parts of the Yummy engine if like they go the first effect of the main deck cup seed to search, then you draw them there, cuts off their entire Mitsurugi engine, cuts off their cup seed synchro search. So that's a pretty obvious good card against them. So, and then the Delta Gamma package. So obviously Gamma is, going to be a very good card. Just in general against a lot of things because, if they like normal summon Cupsy from the main deck, then hitting that with a Gamma is absolutely insane because you just get the body off board and they don't get to search. So that is very, very good. The only way that they're playing through that is with Marshmallow. That's it. Or if they hard draw Surprise, obviously. But yeah, and then the Delta can be really good against the Mitsurugi engine. It just cuts them off of Continue Your Plays when you negate the Mitsurugi ritual spell. Shifter is kind of awkward against this deck, which is why I have it in the middle. It can be good depending on their hand, and it can keep them off of Herald a lot of times, and then it can keep them off of Herald going into their Mitsurugi engine. The problem is that they can set up an okay half board with the Yummy cards, and if you don't have like 2 or 3 pushes, you just may not be able to break their board because they may have some hand traps in hand. They may have Surprise. It just can be awkward at times depending on their hand. And then keep in mind that the Mitsurugi monsters, they just have to be tributed. That's all. It doesn't matter where they get tributed to. It does matter what the location is at the end of the chain link, like we talked about with the Crow Bestial interaction, but it does not matter where they get tributed to. So if Shifter is live and you tribute a Mitsurugi monster, it is still going to trigger in the Banish Zone. So keep that in mind. Izuna is also a somewhat awkward card into this deck. It can be very, very good with Lupus because Lupus can then summon out the Typhon and then it turns off Murakumo. So all of the Yummy monsters target. You'll have the Lupus targeting protection as well as your Zeus play with the Typhon as well. So that can be a very good interaction. And then obviously Retaliancy and Lancia doesn't do anything against this deck. That's fairly obvious. Crystron K9. This is another big one that I am an opportunist on hitting the first K9 card that they activate, whether that's Case, Chaotic Elements, Noroi with an Ash, something like that is... You don't want them to get past that point. If they have extension, they have extension, and they were going to have it anyway, so that doesn't matter. Like, just use your hand trap right at the start, because if you let them keep going, it's going to be a rough time. Noroi can look at your hand at that point. If Elements was their only starter, it was a good hit. If it wasn't their only starter, it never mattered anyway, because if they get to the rest of the engine, you're just triggering the Azuna to gain more advantage, the Ripper to gain more advantage, the Jokel is going to get its search anyway. There's a lot that goes on with this as well. And then if they're starting with Crystron cards, then that means that their hand is not that good. So if they're starting with Crystron cards, then they're going to try to probably bridge the Crystron engine into the K9 engine. So then you can go ahead and stop the Smiger or the Inclusion from doing its search, and you may just cut off their turn. In terms of Bell, most likely I'm probably going to hit the Elements with Bell. Again, just another searcher that if they activate it first thing, they're probably looking for something specific. So Bell would be a good hit on that. Bell may also be a good hit on Lantern. It may be something necessary for them to make. So at that point, they probably have Ripper, but using up the Ripper negate, depending on what deck you're playing, can be pretty decent. Bell's probably not going to find a lot of impact past the Chaotic Elements. That's probably going to be your your best spot if that's the first thing that they activate, because at that point it's probably too late to use Bell. And this is what I'm talking about by using hand traps right at the start. Sulfador and Sulfaneer, you can obviously hit those cards. It's probably going to be too late at that point. They're probably going to have too much advantage, but those are still options that you can hit. Crow, similar to that, you can DD Crow whatever the Lantern targets, and then Lantern effect fizzles, so it just doesn't resolve properly. And then you can hit Lupus so that it doesn't come out, and then they don't have access to a Lupus anymore because it's banished. You can also hit, if Sulfaneer and Sulfador are in the graveyard, you can also hit them from popping out of the graveyard. That's one thing to mention with Bell. If they're activating it from the hand, you can't legally activate Bell. You can only do it if they're activating the effect from graveyard. I know the card includes the effect, but there is no way for them to be able to get the card out from graveyard at that activation time. If it leaves the hand, then it won't summon itself. So it's one of those that Bell is just not a legal activation unless the Sulfador or Sulfaneer is in the graveyard in the first place. And so obviously same thing with Crow. You can Crow it out, and then the effect just doesn't resolve properly, and then you're cutting them off from two important engine pieces. In terms of Veiler Imperm, again, whichever one they do first. If they normal summon Noroi first, you can go ahead and hit the Noroi. I would recommend hitting the Noroi because that may well be their only starter, and at that point it doesn't really matter because if you let it resolve, they're going to look at your hand. In terms of Sulfador, it's another thing. If they start with the Crystron engine, then you'll just go ahead and hit Sulfador. It dumps 2. It's a very, very powerful effect. So that's probably where I'm going to hit as well. Even if they go Jokel effect, reveal Sulfador, I'm probably still going to hit Sulfador with Imperm, depending on what the rest of my hand is. If I only have Infinite Impermanence in my hand, then I'm going to go ahead and hit Sulfador. I'm going to try to cut them off of the Crystron engine from there. The only other place would be to negate Ripper, and that feels very, very awkward as well. You save your Imperm for your turn. It's not going to do much. The end board is pretty cracked, as well as having cards like Spell Canceller up on the board. There's just not a lot you can do. You really want to use your hand traps preemptively. And then Impulse. So the most important card to Impulse is Jokel, because that is a free summon 2 bodies. It's also the only way to interact with Jokel in the first place is with an Impulse, as well as then as soon as Jokel hits the board, if it doesn't leave the field, it's going to search for whatever extension that they need, whether that be Azuna or Lantern. You can also hit Noroi as well. That can, again, if normal summon Noroi is what they're doing and Impulse is your only hand trap, I'm going to stop that every single time. You can also stop the Lantern, obviously, if you feel like that is going to cut off their plays from there. The other thing to mention is if you draw into Impulse, you can hit the Force Release, and that is actually a really high impact place. Or if you just think that if you have other hand traps and you're playing through the rest of the board, you can save your Impulse for the Force Release. And that is a really, really big hit. It stops them from the non-targeting pop, stops them from getting the something like a werewolf out, and then it also stops them from having werewolf effects. So it can stop multi-effects with just one card. Okay, and then going into the cards that are good and bad against Crystron, in terms of the cards that don't have a very specific spot to hit. Nibiru in conjunction with a Veiler or an Imperm can be very, very good into this deck. Again, you probably need something in conjunction to really make it worthwhile. The Mulch Armies, all 3 of them are good. They summon from hand, graveyard, extra deck, and deck. They can, depending on how good their hand is, they can kind of sequence to make it so that you minimize the amount of draws that you get. But overall, the cards are really good, and they stop them from applying a lot of pressure into their board unless they want to give you a significant amount of draws. The Delta Gamma package, obviously very, very good. There's a lot of powerhouse spells that you can hit to kind of cut them off of their consistency, such as Elements, Case, Inclusion, and things like that. Droll, both engines search a lot. It's very, very good. Izuna is a very, very good card into this deck as well. You'll be able to trigger it quite frequently throughout the turn, just because they will activate card effects in the hand and graveyard pretty early on. Shifter, depending on their hand, can shut them off completely. They can also have hands where they can play through a shifter. Again, if you don't have the engine to back up the shifter, a lot of times they can set up a half board that is well enough to play through your deck, and if they have any hand traps in hand, that can be pretty detrimental as well. So I'm not saying that Shifter's not good against this deck. I'm just saying that with the K9 engine as well, it can be a little awkward if their hand is good to be built towards Shifter. Again, I would probably put Shifter in against this deck, but again, you have to weigh that option of if you're playing a deck that is very, very consistent. If your engine is super, super consistent, you could certainly play Shifter and play into their board with 4 or 5 cards. Lancia, this is an awkward card against this deck. I know it doesn't seem like it's an awkward card against this deck. If I am going first, I will side in Lancia because I will cut them off from their Crystron engine, and that can be very, very good. They still can have plays with their Crystron engine, but it cuts them off of the pretty good parts of their Crystron engine, like the continuous extension past your interruption. So that can be good there. Going into them, though, I would not put this card in just because you're going to let them trigger a full K9 board. If Lancia is your only hand trap against this deck, you just opened up an entire stinky diaper against the K9 engine, because the K9 engine will now just full combo you. You'll have 5 cards to play against their interruptions. And then again, they may have some Crystron cards that can set up some type of interruption as well. And then obviously Retaliating Sea, not good against this deck. Vanquish Soul. This is another deck where you kind of just want to hit the first thing that they do. Decently inconsistent deck, so you kind of just want to keep them off of just gaining card advantage from the start, because as soon as they start adding attributes to their hand to be able to resolve different Vanquish Soul effects, that is when things start to get a little bit hairy. So whatever they activate first, Stake Your Soul, Mad Love, Elements, Case, Holy Sue to summon from deck with Ash, or Noroi to summon from deck, any of those types of cards, I'm going to hit them with that hand trap to just put them on. Better have extension, because those are just too powerful of cards to let them get away with. Because think about it this way, if you don't Ash the Elements or the Case, then they are getting into their K9 engine, then makes Ash useless. If you don't Ash Mad Love, and then you Ash the field spell, you're basically doing the same thing, so who cares? You just gave them access to the field spell now. So Ashing Mad Love would just be correct. Let the Mad Love go, and then you let field spell resolve. Then they are able to grab Holy Sue, and they have something else in their hand to summon Holy Sue with, and then start using attributes with. It is not going to be a good time for you. So just be preemptive this format. It's very, very important that you be preemptive. I'm not saying just throw your hand traps willy-nilly, but at the same time, it's rough in terms of trying to wait for hand traps. Don't wait too long to use hand traps. I've watched many games where people do that, and then the hand traps just become useless at that point. Same thing with Bell. You can hit Elements. That's probably the first card that I'm going to hit if they lay that down. Lantern, it may be too late, but it is a good Bell spot, just because they will probably try to negate it with Ripper. So in conjunction with other hand traps, it can be decent. Rock a lot of times can be a good one as well, just because getting that attribute back to hand, if you know their hand and the way that it looks and can kind of predict what attributes that they need, if they need that attribute back from graveyard, Bell can be very, very good as well. Crow, same thing, you're just hitting the target of the Lantern or the Lupus itself. Again, at that point, it might be a little too late, but if Rock is trying to add back something, you can also hit the important add back for them. Just remember that Rock does not target, so if they have 2 different Vanquish Soul names, they will add back whichever one you didn't hit with Crow. So just make sure that you know what you're kind of doing in terms of hitting what attribute that they really need. Veiler and Imperm. So obviously if they normal summon Noroi, I'm going to do that every single time. In terms of the dodgers, like the Borger and the Caesar, I'm not worried about those. If they normal summon Rosin, I'm hitting Rosin. If they summon out Holy Sue, I'm hitting Holy Sue. It's one of those that letting those cards resolve is just way, way too powerful. I'm taking the chance of them having a 2 of in their entire deck. It's like the same concept as Malice. If they like set a card as a bluff, it's 2 cards in your deck. I'm taking that bet every single time, because if I let you go, it's going to be way, way too much from there. Rock is another good card that you can hit because there is no dodge effect. So at that point, if you know that they have a dodge effect in hand, then it doesn't even matter because it's not a Vanquish Soul monster. You can also hit Rock at the beginning of your turn with infinite impermanence in the draw or standby phase. It is a main phase effect only, so you can hit that card and then they can't chain to it, even though it's a quick effect. And then obviously negating Ripper with Imperm is always very good, especially if you've activated a monster effect, because now you turn off 2 effects in 1. And then Impulse, it's another good card in terms of negating whatever the first thing that they do. If they're trying to summon from deck with Holy Sue, if they're trying to summon off of Stake Your Soul, if they are trying to summon from deck with Noroi, hitting Jokul can be very, very good as well. And then what you can do as well is there's 2 different things that if you draw into Impulse on your opponent's turn, you can save it for the Snow Devil if that is very, very detrimental, as well as the Force Release as well. Good cards against Vanquish Soul K9. Both of the Parulia and Fualos are very, very good. They summon from deck and extra deck, decently. If their hand is permitted, they can definitely play around the Fualos, quite well and set up like a half board that's good enough for your interruptions in your hand. But, it's still a decent card that you're going to want to have in your deck. The Parulia is the card that's very, very good into this matchup. They do a lot of summoning from hands, so Parulia is very, very nice. Nibiru can find impact into this matchup as well if they make the Ripper first and you have a negation for it. And then the Cyframe package, Delta is going to hit the first K9 Spell Searcher that they're looking for, or the Stake Your Soul. Droll is also very good into this deck. They search a lot with both engines. And then Izuna, of course, is going to be triggered a lot and early on as well. And so that's what makes Izuna very, very good, is when they start to give you the availability to use Izuna very early on. Bad cards against the deck: Retaliancy, Lancia, and Meowls. They don't do anything to this deck. And then Shifter is not a good card into this deck. They actually play it themselves. They are perfectly fine with setting up their hat board while you wasted a Shifter, and then just play on your turn and decimate you from there. So I would not value Shifter into the Vanquish Soul K9 deck. And so now we are getting into the new decks here from Phantom Revenge. These decks are not super promising. I think that Kewl Tune is probably the one that has the best chance at doing very, very well into the new meta. I've been experimenting with it quite a bit as well, just in case the K9 cards get hit very, very hard. I am not going to act like the Orchest engine can carry itself all by itself. For the viewers that don't know, I am currently on Orchest K9 right now. Check out my other videos about it. It's a very, very good deck in the current metagame and with the consistency that it has. But I do think that I will switch to Kewl Tune if for some reason they just really hit the K9 engine really, really hard, because I'm not going to act like Orchest can carry all by itself. So getting into how to hit the Kewl Tune deck, Ash on the Q is very, very good, because summoning from deck, they're going to summon out Red Nova, and then Rev Nova is going to get another body, Enrico, out from the deck as well. So I would definitely Ash Q if that is their normal summon. Again, this is another thing where you kind of just want to do the first action that they do. If they activate Pot of Extravagance right off the bat, that's 2 cards in the hand, and this is the type of deck that's kind of like Vanquish Soul, where it needs a lot of cards in hand to perform its synchro summons, because they use cards, they just need 1 on field and 1 in hand to be able to perform a synchro summon, because the card text reads that they're able to use these cards from the hand as synchro material as long as they use 1 on field. The Kewl Tune Synchro Quick Play spell is also very, very good. I would probably Ash or Purge that every single time as well. And then Overtake is a very good card as well, because it's a card that does not use their normal summon. They will summon Mix from deck, and then Mix will search for a level 3, which will be Q. And then you normal summon Q, and then just kind of go off from there. And then I put an X over Track Maker. A lot of people will think that they'll be able to hit this card. This card's going to get chain blocked every single time. Every single one of the Kewl Tune main deck monsters has an effect in Graveyard, and specifically the Q and the Clip are ones that can be just activated at any time. They're an extra deck rip and a top of the deck banish and like rearrange essentially, and so they'll just block the maker with that. So I wouldn't hold that for maker. I know a lot of people are gonna think that that's a good idea to hold it. Don't do it. They'll chain block it every single time. In terms of Bell, you can actually hit Rico or Mix just because they are cards that can add from the deck or the graveyard. So you can, even if they're intending to search from the deck, you can hit those with Bell. And then Remix in the grind game is a really, really good card to hit as well. It brings back 2 bodies onto the board. It tributes itself for cost. So they lose out on the Remix body as well as the bodies in graveyard as well from coming back. You can also hit the playlist just because it does add back from graveyard as part of its effect. And then the DD Crow can hit playlist as well. I can't hit Remix because it does not target. Rico or Mix also does not target. But what you can do is you can hit the target that playlist targets, and so the card will resolve without effect because now it does not have the target to verify for the playlist to use that effect on resolution. And then as well, you will not get the add back to hand because the card has changed location. So DD Crow on the playlist target is very, very good. In terms of Imperm or Veiler, you're going to hit the Q. That card is way too strong to let resolve. If they normal summon Rico or Mix, that doesn't really do anything for them, so I wouldn't hit those with Veiler or Imperm. I would wait until they summon out Maker if they even have the materials to make Maker. Because you have to remember that Rico can only search a level 2, and Mix can only search a level 3, so they can't make track just off of normal summon that. It's not a 1-card starter. Overtake is only a 1-card starter because you're not using your normal summon at that point. So they would need to summon out Mix specifically as a normal summon and then have to have something like Gamma or Delta in hand to use as a level 2, or just like another copy of Mix or Clip or something like that. So yeah, I would Imperm Q if that's their first action. If it's not, I would just wait to see if they have what it takes to make Maker and then hit that, because that is an Omni search. It searches for any Kewl Tune card. And then the Impulse. So you can hit Q with Impulse, obviously, to try to stop their plays for that turn. If you draw into Impulse, or if you think that you can't play through these interruptions, you can hit Clip or the Kewl Tune Synchro. Those 2 cards both summon monsters out, and so you can hit those as well, and that will actually stop a lot of what they do. This deck is like very low to the ground. It has a lot of interruptions if you use them correctly, and then it plays a lot of hand traps as well. It's also a very, very consistent deck. So I think that this deck is very good, and it's positioned well into the meta. It just doesn't do anything like super unfair like the current decks do in the meta. Okay, and so good cards into this deck. So Fua is very, very good into this deck. Obviously, they do a lot of summoning from deck and extra deck. Or I shouldn't say a lot, but like for the deck, that's probably the best Mulch Army. The Delta Gamma package is also good because Delta can hit power spells in the deck, such as Extravagance, Overtake, the Kewl Tune Synchro. Those types of effects are very, very good for the deck. Izuna will be able to trigger early on. They trigger a lot of cards in Graveyard, whether it be Red Nova or any of the main deck monsters. And then Shifter is very, very good into this deck. They rely a lot on their Graveyard to make different plays and to have recursion and follow-up for the deck. Nibiru is kind of awkward. They may not even summon 5 times. It's kind of like Dracotail, where like it's not really reliable that they summon 5 times or not. If they overextend, then sure, but you can't rely on something like that. So it is kind of middle of the road. Droll and Lockbird, it's another one that depends on their hand. If they start with Extravagance and then they have cards like Rico or Mix, or they have Synchro Overtake, even if they're summoning from deck, that doesn't really like do anything. So Droll and Lockbird can kind of, depending on their hand, can be decent, but it's not a card that I would like heavily rely on to stop this matchup. And then Lancey has another kind of weird one. Lancia is one that if you are playing with your cards, you can actually use this card on their turn to keep them off of using the War effect or the Rico Synchro, which both of those have to banish as costs to be able to use their effects. So Lancia can be decent there as well as stopping them from using Pot of Extravagance. So I'm not saying that it's the best card in the world against them. I'm just saying that like those are the type of situations that that you can use Lancia in. And if you're like siding out cards from your deck because it was like built awkwardly and you have like a really bad card that has to like stay in your deck, but you have Lancia on the side, I would just put in the Lancias over that because at least it does something whenever you have a situation like that where you can stop them on their turn pushing into your board. Again, I'm talking about going first, not going second. It doesn't do anything against them going second because it only activates on your opponent's turn. So going into their board, you can't drop Lancia there. And then bad cards, they don't really summon from hand. They don't summon from graveyard. Retaliating Sea, overall, it's probably not very good. The only time where it would be good is if they start their plays with either Synchro Overtake or they start their plays with the Kewl Tune quick play spell. Then Retaliating Sea could be pretty good. As for the Hecahands deck, this is another deck where I would kind of just stop the earliest card that they're trying to use. So the Mirror Sword Knight, obviously that's an obvious hit for Ash to keep them off of getting to the Chimera Fusion. The two ones that shuffle themselves back into deck and then either search for a spell trap or summon from deck, you're going to want to hit those as well. Once they get to like the big boss monsters of the Hecahands deck, it's difficult because then they have access to Jaza, and so and then they're starting to like use your cards, whether they're in your hand or from your deck, and that can be kind of awkward at that point. So you kind of just want to like stop the first thing that they do. The actual like Hecahands spell itself is very, very good, and then if they are able to bridge into the Fiendsmith engine, just wait for Requiem to come out. Ash the Requiem, so that way that card is out of their extra deck and they can't continue their plays. I wouldn't Ash the Evil Hero card that gets gold out from deck. I would just wait for Requiem and then hit Requiem from there. In terms of the Crow or Bell, they both hit the same cards. It's either Big Wing Baphomet trying to bring back one of the big Hecahands boss monsters, or you can try to stop Fusion from coming back to hand so that they don't have access to Fusion on your turn. In terms of Imperm Veiler, same exact thing. I'm going to hit whatever card they do first. So whether that be Gazelle, Baphomet, or Apprentice, I'm going to hit all of those first. If I have multiple of them, then you can start hitting the fusions as they come out. The two fusions I would hit would be Jaza to keep them off of continuing their Hecahands plays, or I would hit the Fusion Baphomet Phantom so that way they can't get the dump that bridges into their Fiendsmith engine. It bridges into their floodgates as well. So again, try to stop their starters first, then you can try to hit the fusions if you have multiple hand traps. And then Impulse. So Impulse, you're going to hit the Mirror Sword Knight, of course, if that's the first action that they do. The Hecahands monster that summons from deck, you can also hit that to cut them off of the Hecahands engine. And then Chimera Fusion, that's probably what I'm going to wait for, is for Chimera Fusion, because that's what does the most broken things, is when they start fusing. So firstly, I'm probably going to wait for the Chimera Fusion. If you think that they don't have Chimera Fusion, you can always hit the Mirror Sword Knight, and then that also keeps them off of just going for it in the first place. Again, you kind of have to judge that situation by yourself, but the main goal of this kind of hand trap layout is to keep them off of the counter traps, because the counter traps are kind of the most broken part of the deck. So you want to keep them from getting a Hecahands monster onto the field, because that is what allows them to use the counter traps in the first place, as well as just stopping the Hecahands engine from kind of going off in the first place as well. And then good and bad cards against this deck. The Fualis is obviously very, very good. They summon from deck and from extra deck quite a bit. The Delta Gamma package, you're negating power spells like Hecahands and like the Chimera Fusion. Izuna is able to trigger a lot. They do a lot of activating from the hand and the graveyard. Dimension Shifter is obviously phenomenal against this deck. It's good against pretty much all fusion decks. And then Droll and Lockbird, they do quite a bit of searching in this deck, so that can also find good impact. Retaliating Sea, amazing. It's just like Shifter, but you know, they're going to activate something like a Chimera Fusion to bring it out, and then you just chain Retaliating Sea, and then that's kind of just like game over, because now the fusion materials that they use won't trigger their effects because they're going to get banished, and so on and so forth. Not being able to use Fiendsmith Engine and things like that. Nibiru, it just depends on their hand, but it can be pretty good. They do summon a lot if they have a really good hand, but of course you just have to watch out for the Fiendsmith Engine, because then they'll summon out Wave King Caesar. And then bad cards against this deck, they don't really summon from hand a whole lot. They don't summon from grave too much. You know, they do those things, but you know, they have ways to play around these cards. I wouldn't necessarily side them in over other cards. You know, we can see a whole list of really good cards against this deck. And then Lancia, they don't really do any banishing. And then finally, Enneacraft. I hate this deck with a passion. I think that it is the most ridiculous anti-meta deck. It just doesn't fit into the format, and it's just going to be really, really cheesy when people win with this deck, just because it's either going to be they just win their die rolls all day and are able to go through game. It just loses when it goes second. You know, there's just not a lot to do, and then now they're starting to put in like Vanity's Fiend and stuff like that. The deck kind of just like makes me mad, to be honest. And a meta where like we're so focused on hand trapping our opponent because it's our only way to stop our opponent, and then they just like slam a deck down that just basically says like, I put everything face down, there's really no hand traps involved in it. Yeah, there's not a lot of spots to, you know, you can't impulse the deck because those aren't once per turns. You can't ash the deck because you're just ashing like the pendulum effects to search, and that doesn't really do anything either. And yeah, any other effects just seem kind of useless. It seems like board breakers are probably the way to go against this deck, but if you are playing hand traps, Perulia is really good against this deck. You'll get quite a bit of draws off of Perulia. Droll, they do a lot of searching in this deck, and then Izuna can be very good against this deck as well, as long as they don't put up Whale to just negate your Izuna from coming out in the first place. This card can be very good because what you can do is you can kind of do the same tactic against Yummy, where you summon out the Typhon, and then they can't use any of the broken guys because they are 3,000, and then you just Zeus wipe their board from there. So that can be a very, very good play as well. Thank you guys again so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything that I missed, or if there's anything that you would do differently in terms of hand trapping your opponent. Of course, I am humble enough to admit that there are things that I'm going to look over. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an extremely complex game. I hope that this information helps you out no matter what stage of the game that you're at. But as always, thank you again for watching, and I hope that you continue to find value in my videos. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.